mythic origins of modern art, architecture, and industrial design start with the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus underpins the curriculum of art and architecture schools around the world. It became the overarching design process of all art, design, and architecture of the 20th century. Born between the First and Second World War in Germany, the Bauhaus was a romantic vision of the future based on mass production and technology. The Bauhaus created modern art, design, and architecture while destroying the traditional academy system based on drawing, painting, and sculpture. In this video, we will look at the Bauhaus, its history, theories, and design methodology. Most importantly, we'll look at how its design process has become ubiquitous in modern design. It created the disciplines of industrial design, graphic design, advertising, and architecture as we know them today. For a 14-year period between the two world wars, Germany's Bauhaus School of Art and Design defined modernity. From utopian ideas about the future, to objective design using science, to inventing industrial design, the Bauhaus fused fine art and technology. Notable members of the Bauhaus include Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, Walter Gropius, Paul Klee, Wasyl Kandinsky, and Marcel Breuer. Other members included Annie Albers, Joseph Albers, Hans Meyer, and Herbert Bayer. The modernist movement in architecture can be traced back to Peter Behrens. In his office, he mentored Mies van der Rohe, Le Corbusier, Walter Gropius, and Adolf Meyer. These architects went on to be leading figures in the modern movement. The Bauhaus is established in the German city of Weimar. Architect Walter Gropius is the school's director. The painter Johannes Itten establishes the basic course, focusing on materials, color, and form instead of drawing and painting. His conceptual approach shapes the Bauhaus design process. The De Stijl movement founder Theo van Doesburg gives a series of lectures on geometric abstraction and functionalism. Itten is forced out by Gropius. Gropius changes the school's motto to Art into Industry, emphasizing mass production. Laszlo Moholy-Nagy becomes director of the basic course, teaching constructivism. Kandinsky, Paul Klee, and Joseph Albers are brought in to teach the basic course. Having lost support of the Weimar government, the Bauhaus moves into the industrial city of Dessau. The Nazis gain power in Dessau, forcing the Bauhaus to move to Berlin. The school was dissolved in 1933 under the Nazis. This was due to Adolf Hitler's criticism of the Bauhaus as being degenerate art. The Museum of Modern Art in New York in 1938 has its first exhibition of Bauhaus works under Walter Gropius's supervision. Philip Johnson helped bring the Bauhaus to the United States, first by having exhibitions at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and secondly by working with Mies van der Rohe in designing the Seagram Building in New York, completed in 1958. Many of the key figures of the Bauhaus came to the United States and taught its concepts. Mies van der Rohe taught at Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago. Joseph Albers taught at Yale University in Connecticut. Marcel Breuer taught at Harvard. But the most influential teacher was Walter Gropius, who taught at Harvard from 1937 to 1952. He taught I.M. Pei, Philip Johnson, Paul Rudolph, and Lawrence Halprin. The Bauhaus taught that design is a language, structured by universal laws of geometry and perception. Art can be reduced to scientific laws of seeing and thinking. Art wasn't based on subjective experiences of beauty and emotion, but on objective laws governed by science. The goal was to train the mind and the eye to the laws of abstraction.
In Agram wurde ein neuer Kindergarten zur Aufnahme von Kindern der arbeitenden Bevölkerung geschaffen.
The child is artist movement emerged in Weimar Germany as social conditions worsened. Working-class children were forced to enter factories at the age of 12, while middle-class children attended schools and universities. The ability to engage in child's play was a luxury only the upper classes could afford. The idea that all children were creative and could learn from play was the basis of the kindergarten movement. The child is artist movement used kindergarten-based techniques in training professional art students. The idea was to unlock students' creativity through a return to childhood. This was a return to origins and primitive explorations. Elementary geometric form was used to create abstract expressionism. The modern art process was centered around abstract play. Artists were expected to show their play and finished artwork. Froebel's blocks, also known as Froebel's gifts, were educational toys developed by Friedrich Froebel as part of the kindergarten or child as artist movement. These were part of structured play designed to foster creativity and abstract reasoning in young children. Froebel's blocks inspired architects like Frank Lloyd Wright, who credited them with teaching how to understand abstract reasoning of geometry and spatial composition. Wright manipulated space in the traditional house by exploding the box and pulling and pushing space. This manipulation of space was a direct result of playing with Froebel's blocks, which can be easily manipulated. Gestalt psychology is a theory of perception that states humans naturally organize visual elements into whole patterns rather than in isolated parts. It is like Freud and Jung's idea of projection, where the mind projects images onto things it sees. Lectures on Gestalt psychology were given at the Bauhaus, and its ideas became the foundation of Bauhaus art theory. Intense experimentation was conducted for more than 20 years to try to understand the laws of visual perception. Some ideas include shape identity. The law of shape identity states that regular polygons are more easily recognized and remembered, while more complex shapes are equated to simple polygons. Similarity. Repeated shapes or colors are seen as a cohesive group, not individual elements. Proximity. Elements placed close together are perceived as related and can guide a viewer's attention. Continuity. Lines can lead the eye to perceive a continuous pattern, even if interrupted. Closure. The law of closure states that incomplete forms are often mentally completed by the viewer to form a whole. Figure ground. This is the idea of seeing solid voids or figures on a background, often alternating between the two. German functionalism in art, design, and architecture emerged in the Bauhaus. It states the form of an object, building, or artwork should be based on its intended function or purpose. Functionalism values utility, simplicity, and efficiency over decorative elements. This led to minimalism and the elimination of ornamentation. The idea of truth to materials led to the modern use of materials like glass, steel, and concrete. Artists were trying to reconcile art and the machine. In Europe, there was an infatuation with Americanism, the love of American mass production. In America, this was called Fordism, based on Henry Ford's mass-produced automobile factories and the invention of the assembly line. Mass production wasn't seen just as a means to an end, it was an end in itself. In modernism was a belief that culture is artificial, while science was pure. This romantic belief in technology saving society bordered on the religious. The Bauhaus believed that mass production would save humanity. Modernism brought with it the promise of a new life. Science and technology became ways to improve the lives of all people. This required tearing down the old, outdated views of aristocracy, history, religion, and replacing them with truth, science, and mathematics. The Bauhaus taught the elimination of historical precedent in art and architecture. Architecture in the academic period was taught as a series of architectural styles like the Gothic or the Baroque. With the Industrial Revolution, architects struggled with how to approach new materials and technologies. The Bauhaus taught all historic precedent was meaningless under such new conditions. Designers should embrace the machine age and eliminate historical ornamentation from art and architecture. Although art and architectural theory had a long history in civilization, design did not. Bauhaus brought design theory to industrial design, typographic design, graphic design, and even crafts like textiles. The same modern theories architects used to design buildings could be used to design furniture or rugs. Theory wasn't just for philosophers and intellectuals, but could have a practical application. Germany was a hotbed of movements for and against modernism. On one side were anti-Semitic, nationalistic, and Teutonic-Christian movements, which culminated with the Nazis. On the other side were avant-garde artists, gay nightclubs, and women's emancipation groups. In art, there were many avant-garde movements that coalesced in the Bauhaus. This included German Expressionism, with its vivid colors and emotional intensity, and new media, which explored functionalism and media like film, photography, and graphic design. There was excitement around new media like film, photography, and photo collage. But unfortunately, the Nazis suppressed avant-garde art, forcing the closure of the Bauhaus, and many German artists and architects fled into exile in the United States. Ironically, in American society, avant-garde ideas were co-opted by corporate culture they came to serve. What had once been a critique of conservative German middle-class values became a celebration of American corporatism and consumerism. It may be said that industrial design was invented as a discipline at the Bauhaus. When Philip Johnson had an exhibition of industrial design at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, it cemented the idea of industrial design as a form of art in modernity. The exhibition was called Machine Art and ran in 1934. This established the legitimacy of industrial design, and it was eventually adopted by art schools as a field of study.
Homes have more than new plans. They have new patterns for living, made attractive by luxurious interiors. Living space is enhanced by new materials and accented by subtleties of color selection. Modern packaging does more than wrap and hold and conceal. Stunning in color, ingenious in design. It brings festivity to the marketplace, tempting, hinting, and revealing.
Of course, our world is inundated by industrial design today, with the most ubiquitous being Apple products like the mouse, the personal computer, and the iPhone. The fonts that everyone uses on the computer are a direct result of Bauhaus typeface design. In fact, Apple and tech companies are directly influenced by Bauhaus ideas and methodologies. Visual signs are graphic elements that communicate information. This takes visual elements and abstracts them to the level of language. Visual signs were called translations in the Bauhaus. Translation is turning some experience of phenomena into a graphic sign. The act of drawing was one such form of translation, but diagrams, visual signs, indexes, and graphs were also translations. Drawing is seen in this context as motion studies, where a line on paper is seen to chart the motion of the line across the plane of a page. A graph plots data in a gridded space. Graphs represent a relationship between two or more variables, such as time or quantity. The graph belongs to a category of signs called the index, which is a relationship between a sign and its referent. Indexes appear through the textbooks of the Bauhaus. They link the sign with the physical world. Grids were taught at the Bauhaus as a primary ordering technique. Paul Klee manipulated grids to create compositions. He said grids have a very primitive structural rhythm. His drawing exercises turn the grid into a net, becoming an active tool for compositions. This grid technique was taught to first-year art and architecture students in schools like Harvard. Grids were very important to textile designs where weaving was done on a loom. The textile art of Annie Albers is an example of the creative use of grids. The architect Peter Eisman has taken this grid and turned it into architecture. The grid in his houses are not only a design and organizational tool, but they disrupt the function of the house as a machine for living in. The use of a grid as a non-functional structure turns Bauhaus efficiency on its head. Joseph Albers' stencil typeface of 1925 was built on abstract geometric forms like the triangle, square, and circle. Paul Renier's typeface, Futura, from 1925, was based on forms created from the compass, T-square, and triangle. Why do architects write in all capitals? Herbert Bayer in 1925 argued that since speech doesn't need capital letters, they are no longer needed in typology. He argued it would be more efficient for children to learn and printers to print. Architects influenced by the Bauhaus argued that all caps would be faster and more efficient to write for blueprints. This was adopted in architectural standards as architects tried to express how scientifically efficient they were. Diagramming links concept to visual form. One example of how diagramming was first used at the Bauhaus, then later at Harvard, was Paul Rudolph's diagramming of Mies van der Rohe's Barcelona pavilion. Rudolph called this diagramming a graphic analysis of Mies's Barcelona pavilion. This diagram shows how space is expanded or compressed based on wall planes. This diagram shows the circulation patterns and the reflection of sound off the walls as a person moves through the space. This shows the circulation pattern and major views as people move through the space. This diagram shows planes that create the perception of space through diagonal lines. This diagram shows how planes create the perception of space by creating centers and peripheries. This is a lighting diagram showing how light enters the spaces. These diagrams show how Gestalt perceptual theory was used by architects to design space. From Russian constructivism, the Bauhaus took the idea of assemblies or additive elements. This gives the impression that an object has been added to over time. This is most clearly seen in architecture, where cities and towns are built from additive processes of one building being added to another over time. From architecture, the idea of adding, assembling, or constructing one form to another can be used in painting, sculpture, and other fine arts. But what can be added to each other? Any clearly distinct form can be added to another. In sculpture, additive masses can be used. In Russian constructivism, and later in the Bauhaus, rectilinear cubes or boxes can be added to each other to form a composition of boxes. In the De Stijl, additive planes were used to show assemblies. These planes were emphasized by bright colors or graphic text. In graphic design, the Bauhaus process was to add shapes to each other in an additive composition. This included bright colors in abstract forms to show the composition was deliberately assembled. Also from Russian constructivism came the idea of additive materials. One construction material like steel could be added to another like concrete or glass. This often turned into sculptural compositions of abstract forms and materials. From these material studies, Bauhaus designers often came up with juxtaposition of elements. Mises' Barcelona chairs were stainless steel tubes juxtaposed with leather cushions. This juxtaposition of materials became a hallmark of Bauhaus furniture design and carried through to industrial design and architecture. From this constructivism, we get neo-constructivism of today. Moshe Safdie's Habitat 67 was deeply influenced by constructivism. Frank Gehry's forms are influenced by additive masses. Zaha Hadid's paintings come directly from constructivism, and her architecture is based on her paintings of additive masses. What has become of the Bauhaus today? Design was an expression of industry, a tool of management used to control the opinion of employees, customers, and the public. In this way, the Bauhaus has become a corporate style. It started as a German romantic view of American industry, only to come to America and be used to sell American corporatism. One example is the use of Bauhaus's typeface style, Futura, by the Mobil Corporation. The blue and red comes directly from the Bauhaus color schemes, and the red O stands for oil. The repurposing of the avant-garde into corporatism is most evident in Mises' architecture, where his skyscraper design is used to express corporate power over the city skyline. If you've stayed with me this long into the video, congratulations! I've just given an overview of art and architectural education and why it exists in the form it is today. I think it needs to be reformed and reimagined, but before we do that, we must understand where it comes from. Understanding the Bauhaus is the key to understanding art and architectural education today. I'm Jamie Roberts. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe.